I'm Christine Tebbitt, and this is some of my work on water soluble. This piece of work is called Casitas de Espana and was inspired by a trip to Granada, and was the view that I had from the Alhambra balcony on the Alhambra Palace. The technique used here is using water-soluble fabric called Solufleece, and I was able to draw my little individual houses, trees, bushes, all separately, and work on each individual little house or tree as I wanted to. I would then dissolve away the water-soluble fabric, and I would have a collection of the houses and the foliage that I wanted. I've grouped them on handmade paper after I've given it a wash of just watercolour paints, and using a thread that is invisible, I've been able to sew the pieces together to be able to lay down onto the handmade paper, and I've actually glued it in place. This piece of work is called LA to San Francisco. It was inspired by my 25th wedding anniversary trip that my husband and I did. We flew into LA and did a road trip all along the coast from LA to San Francisco, going via Las Vegas in the middle, where we had a helicopter trip that everybody takes to the Grand Canyon. Again, this is a piece of work that has been done with water soluble, because I didn't really know, there were so many pieces to pick out, so many memorable places and iconic signs that I wanted to show in a piece of work. So I've tackled it by doing it individually, by from the beginning, with the surfboards, the lifeguard hut, the pier at Santa Monica, and then heading on to Las Vegas, all the lovely sights in Las Vegas, all the different hotels, the Flamingo Hotel, and then there was Hard Rock Cafe, and all sorts of different Paris. Everything was sort of like needed to be, you know, put out there. And then we ended up in San Francisco, and the best way of describing that, it was showing the bridge, the trams, the painted ladies, and different iconic signs that we saw in San Francisco. And again, this is all done on water soluble Solufleece, where you draw what you want onto the Solufleece and then fill it in with thread, dissolve the fabric away, and you're just left with the thread work. And again, I've placed this on a piece of luchador that I've painted with watercolours, and I've glued it on sort of like separately in places, all the pieces of work that I wanted to show, and then that's gone on a painted canvas board. This piece was inspired by lockdown, really. The textile group that I belong to, we were given a topic of my garden, which is what most people who had gardens during lockdown devoted a lot of their times. So I thought I would create a water-soluble garden, put in butterflies in it, birds, geese. Not that I've got any geese in my garden, but I thought they looked nice. And yeah, this is a technique, the same technique as before, drawing onto Solufleece, filling it in with thread, dissolving the fabric away, and then piecing it all together. The background on this one is a piece of pelmet violin, which is normally white, and I've dyed that green, and then on top of the pelmet violin I've made silk paper with green fibres, silk fibres, and placed them on top of the hand-dyed pelmet violin, tacked it in place so that it stayed put, and then started gradually incorporating all the flowers, the leaves, the birds, the butterflies. And then in between a lot of them I've also done a lot of hand sewing with French knots, cross stitch, anything that would represent and fill in and create a garden, a lovely garden look. These butterflies are inspired by themselves, obviously. Had a real thing about the butterflies at one time and wanted to create them in thread. Again, these are done with Soluble fleece and thread, just the thread work, and then dissolving away the water soluble, and you're just left with the butterfly itself. I've placed them on a fabric which is linen, just to give them like a specimen look that you get in a museum. I've done separate ones individually, trying to capture all their details. This piece was inspired by a title that we were given using just one colour and variations on that colour. It was for the Embroiderers Guild South East region, and it was a competition, and this is using water soluble and water soluble with chiffon. So I've done things like the butterflies and some of the flowers and leaves all on water soluble fleece. Again, thread used, different threads, and then dissolve away the water soluble, just leaving the thread behind. And some of the other pieces of the leaves and the flowers have been done on chiffon using water soluble to draw the design that you want, sewing it, and then when you dissolve away the water soluble, you're just left with the thread on the chiffon, and you're able to manipulate it by before it dries, crinkling it up and placing it on a polystyrene board or a cork board with your pins to get it giving you more of flexibility and shape. And then I've put them all together, and they're on silk paper and pelmet violin dyed. And then I've framed it but not put it in under glass or anything, because it's quite deep, and you need to see all the textures in it because there's lots of different textures. I've added beads, things like that, and it actually won first prize in the competition for the South East region, which I was very proud of.